Hello and welcome to our session on new Mexican hybridities. This is actually one of a series, a series of sessions on emerging voices. Last week we're looking at Greece, and next week we'll be looking at Kazakhstan, and then beyond that Hong Kong and so on and so on. This is a particularly special session because we'll be looking at emerging female voices. I always believe that the future is female, certainly in terms of academia. Most of our students now are female, and I think within a few years we will have more female professors, I would say, than male professors. But today it's a great delight to be looking at Mexican designers. I until very recently I was living in California, where really we were next door neighbors, and I always found Mexican culture incredibly rich and vibrant, and one of the special things about living in California. Today, I'm delighted that we have Ronan Bolaños, who is going to be hosting this session. Ronan is a professor at UNAM, the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico, which is the leading school of architecture, leading school of architecture in Mexico. There he runs a lab called LATE, Laboratory for the Design and Technological Experimentation, and he's been very active in Acadia and elsewhere as part of the scientific committee. So he himself is one of those emerging voices coming out of Mexico. So I'll be handing over to Ronan, who will be hosting the session itself. So welcome, Ronan. It's great to see you, and thank you so much for inviting me to Mexico. But March, April last year, I had a wonderful time in Mexico, and please invite me again. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Neil. Yeah, we had such a great time. I'm really, really glad. I'm really happy to have my fabulous designers and architectural designers and colleagues, female voices from Mexico. I'm really happy and excited to start this session. And well, I would like to introduce our first participant, Dinorah Schulte, which is a Mexican architect. She was born in Veracruz, and well, she did a master in advanced studies in the ETH, and well, she participated with Norman Foster Foundation in the Robotic Atelier, and has participated with many other people, such as Mad Architects from China, Ensemble Studio from Spain. And she's CEO of Manufactura, which is a digital fabrication enterprise that she runs really well. And well, she has such a firm and really great career developed so far. She's also a professor of Universidad La Salle, and she's been professor in other universities. She's part of CEMEX editorial board and many other important things, such as receiving an award for research from SIGRADE last year. So welcome, Dinorah. We're very happy to have you. And well, the mic is yours. So let me unshare screen and let you go.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, everybody. First of all, thank you so much for your time and for taking me in consideration for this kind of presentation to Digital Futures in Espanol, in English, and to Niall and Ron. I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully I will be very... here we go. Okay, there you go. So, as Ron said, my name is Dinorah. I'm an architect, but also I have a specialization, a master in digital fabrication and robotics from ETH Zurich. And today I'm going to present my practice here in Mexico. The name is Manufactura, which means manufacturing, and a little bit what we are doing and why we're doing this. First of all, I'm going to talk about the three principal problems or problematics that happen in the construction sector in Mexico. First of all, and this is for everybody, we are responsible for the 40% of the global CO2 emissions at a global level. But the second one, it's very common and typical in Mexico. Here exists a monopoly and a stigma for the use of new materials in the construction sector. Why? Because here we have the biggest company of concrete in the world, that is Cemex. And the third one, the lack of fair human labor and threat of automation of job replacement. Here in Mexico, more than the 60% of the population focus on human labor in manufacturing. So here, what is our motivation? We believe that the technology is not an enemy. The technology do not want to replace human labor. The technology, for example, we believe if we use it for a sustainable build future, and also we want to use technology or building an innovative future based on tradition. Why? Because the ancestral technology is, in my perspective, a little bit more strong. So for me, it's very important to preserve it. And the third one is because we want to develop a new dialogue among digital fabrication and humanity through technology. So this is our solution, our philosophy, innovation based on tradition. Everybody said that the machines are going to replace or are better than human capacities. And for us, it's a little bit the opposite. For us, we are looking forward for a cooperation between the human and the machines. So we are redesigning the way of making. And why we do it? Because we believe in the conscious use of technology for a sustainable future. I think conscience and the awareness of using technology is the difference, and it's making the difference between the machines control the humans or the humans control machines. So Manufactura, we are a multidisciplinary research and production factory which studies and questions manufacturing through innovation from tradition, providing new alternatives or solutions to fulfill a sustainable build future. So what makes us different? Principally, we don't believe in the replacement of the labor made by machines. So we believe in a new production model that generates the union between tradition and innovation. And our principal objectives are the sustainability, a circular economy, new manufacturing process, new economy of scales of production. For example, we do not believe that we have to produce in an industrial way or in a mass production. Right now, we should produce in a local scale. And we, of course, are doing new ways of doing architecture, because also a lot of people told me, you are not doing architecture anymore. I don't think so. I think also digital fabrication is a new perspective of doing architecture. So our services, we have from developing material. For example, we develop material from scratch to ensure their circularity. The second one, we also do research. We do and conduct research projects in collaboration with academic institutions, PhDs, masters, and undergraduate students, as well as companies to foster innovation. The third one, we also do commercial projects with different brands or different companies, and we create innovative projects that can be applied for any architectural space, object, or art form. And the last one, we also have an education platform, which it's a platform that provides democratized access to the community, offering information and conscious use of technology. Most of us, and here in Mexico, we don't have access to a university or educational. So, for example, this is an opportunity to try to impact more about or beyond the students that they are in universities here in Mexico. Right now, we have a second-hand robotic arm. This is a KUKA KR 150, and this is a machine that allows us to transform, to explore, and to research what we are doing today. So what is our technology? Right now, we only have two technologies. The first one is additive manufacturing. So everybody knows that is 3D printing. We 3D print with different kinds of materials that I'm going to explain after. And the second technology is an automated manufacturing. And in this case, we are doing robotic knitting. And this both process allow us to work with natural materials like fibers or like waste. About the material research that we have, this is a classification of the waste in Mexico in 2022 by Semarnat, that is the Department of Environment here in Mexico. And for example, more than the 60% of the waste in Mexico are organic waste, which came from the food industry. Then it's paper and cardboard, then glass, plastic, metals, and others. So right now, that's why we are classifying our materials in two groups. The first one is like about the tradition, and these are very local materials that is very easy to get, and we have a lot of like access to them. For example, local clay, earth, ceramics, and Mexican talavera. That is not the same like ceramics, but it's kind of ceramics. This, for example, only can be worked in Puebla and in Tlaxcala. And the second materials are circular materials. It's like a biocomposite made with different kind of waste that a lot of people donate us. And this is very interesting because, first of all, these kind of materials do not have a firing process, which makes a more circular and also more sustainable. And secondly, all the waste is totally donated, which made also these materials very cheap. We started in 2022, and after 3 years working, we did these 6 principal projects. I'm not going to talk about all each projects. I'm just going to mention why they are very important. For example, in 2022, we started with the Excel project, which is a prototype about answering the question that it is possible to build with our waste. And the answer is yes, it's totally possible. And for example, we got a donation from Rosetta, which is a very famous bakery here in Mexico City. And then we 3D print bricks with this kind of waste and another kind of organic binders. Then also we did Mextropolis Pavilion in 2022, collaborating with MIT Digital Structures, HLN New Story, and Amphora Studio. And in this case, we do a Vigueta and Bobadilla, who in Mexico is a very common roof system. And in this case, the beam was changing the shape, and with 3D printing, we started to take advantage of the capacity of 3D printing to start to change the shape also of the bobadillas, and this bobadillas was made with traditional clay from Oaxaca and Zacatecas. In 2023, we also did the same. We used the same mix about the eggshell project, but instead of using eggshell, we were using sawdust from wood. It was a national wood from Mexico, because in the place that we are working, we have our lab, there is a wood factory upstairs, and they have a lot, I think like half ton of sawdust of waste every day. So for us, it was also an important opportunity to use waste. And after this, also we do the Talavera project, which for me is more a philosophical project, because in this case, we question about what is the position with the robot and also with the craftsmen. The craftsmen right now in Mexico are disappearing, and we need to protect them. So I talked with the artisans, and they told me, we are very afraid about the use of technology because it's going to replace us. So what we made here is a bridge and a communication between the craftsman and the technology. And then in 2024, we did the wax project, which we use beeswax to do a lattice to replace plastic and acrylics for an interior lattice that is exposed in the Gensler office here in Mexico City. And finally, we also do Terra blocks, which is we were questioning about the Adobe blocks, why we are always doing the same shape, like rectangular shape. And of course, it have a meaning because it's the shape of the hand. What wouldn't happen if with technology, we can also go a little bit out of the box. How we work? We work in this kind of methodology. First of all, we develop the material to allow the 3D printing. After this, we did a geometry prototyping, depending how the client are going to like the size or on the geometry and how they are creating these kind of shapes. And after the client or our collaborators accept the shape, then we jump to the third stage, that is the mass production for the architectural application. In terms of, we are trying also to design process that reflect not only the present, also the past, that is the tradition, but also the future, what is coming. So we want to do this kind of bridge and dialogues between the 3 times at the same time. We are based here in Mexico City, in Laguna. For the people who never been here, we are in Colonia Doctores. Colonia Doctores is a very famous neighborhood here because there is a lot of old factories, and in this case, we are located here. That is a very textile factory in the last century, in the beginning of the last century. And right now, Productora is transforming this. Productora is a very important architectural firm here in Mexico, and it's transforming this place in a creative hub. And also for us, it's very important because there are like little factories in a very big factory. And well, this is the place and how it looks like. It's a very creative place. And finally, about me, So I'm an architect. I'm also like, well, I studied here in Mexico City in Universidad Iberoamericana, as Ron said, and also got the robotic atelier for the Norman Foster Foundation. I study a specialization in robotics in ETH Zurich. Nowadays, I'm currently based here in Mexico City. I'm co-founder. I'm founder and principal of Manufactura. What is my research is about promoting cultural exchange through technology to explore the impact of digital fabrication in Mexico. And about women, for example, this is a very important quote from the Secretary of the Economy Department here in Mexico, and they said, like, during the first quarter of 2024, the construction employed population in the construction sector in Mexico was only 8 million people, but 96% are men, and only the 3% are women. So for us, having a woman here, like in a manufacturing factory, is for us also a new open narrative for woman empowerment, but also for equity. In terms of genders, this is we work with a lot of clients, collaborators, media, workshops, and right now we also have a lot of awards, honors, but also a very important fact, we not only do commercial projects, we also do research papers, for example, for Acadia, Fabricate, Sigradi, and well, we also do a lot of exhibitions around the world, in Germany, in Mexico, in Puebla. Well, this is all of Manufactura, and hopefully we can connect in social media, like @ManufacturaMX. For me, this is everything.
Thank you, Dinorah.
You're welcome.
Such an outstanding and passion we can see in your career. So we'll head towards Alicia. So let me introduce Alicia Nahmad. She's an architectural designer with passion for robotics and digital fabrication, and her work focuses on exploring design, integrating materials. She is the founder of the Circular Factory that wants to democratize the construction industry and the future-proofing the trades through enabling equal access to digital machines and tools. She has already more than 15 years of experience. She did a master's in architecture association, and she holds a PhD from Cardiff University. And well, she is also an associate professor at the University of Calgary. I'm compacting the bio. There's a lot to say about her. And she also co-directed the Laboratory of Integrative Design, and she's also a visiting professor at the Whitman School of Design and the University of Pennsylvania. And among many other things, and many exhibitions and many construction experimental with digital and robotic fabrication and machine learning. She was in charge of constructing the NIT Candela, which was an awarded piece that actually was done here in Mexico. And well, she has also worked along Populous and with Zaha Hadid Architects and Zaha Hadid Architects Code, of course. And well, so probably we should already pass the mic to Alicia. Are you there, Alicia? There we go.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for the invitation, Ronan and Anil. Thank you very much. Very happy to be here sharing on this panel of Mexican women. Very, very excited. So let me share my screen and talk a little bit about the work. Oh, sorry. Yeah, is that okay now?
It's in process. There you go.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, so thank you a lot for the invitation. And today I want to talk a little bit about my career and some of the projects that we have developed over the last few years now, trying to work through digital technologies and their application to our context in Mexico and to also the context of other economies where we are working right now. And I have had the opportunity to work in various projects throughout the years, kind of exploring architectural geometry. And most of the focus has been in how architectural geometry, or the way we design and the way we design form, can really affect how it is built, how efficient it is, how sustainable it is, and can affect how it gets made. Also, I have been working with robotics, and not only with robots, but also a lot of other machines throughout the fabrication process to try to find more efficient or different ways of building and of creating shapes that maybe have run out of fashion, but we know their geometry works better. And how can we improve these? How can we go back to these kind of geometries? And a lot of our inspiration comes from the car industry, where we can see in the car industry like how things have changed, how cars made today don't look like cars made in the 1900s. However, when we go to the built environment, we see that buildings done today maybe look even worse or less attractive or the same that buildings doing on the 1900s. And when we start to look a little bit deeper into the construction techniques that we use, we also see that, for example, the patent for the rebar is from the 1900s. And if we see how we are building with rebar today, we are using very much the same processes, the same way of setting of rebars, the same way of composing them. And it's not only about concrete, also about CLT. The patent for CLT is from 1920. So it's when we see these kind of things, it's really to rethink why are we still building with techniques that maybe have more than 100 years old by now, and how can we improve these? And we know that AI is a really great tool that we are using a lot these days that can give us really great ideas on how to build, but we still have to manufacture and build things. So we still need to focus on how we can get these projects into fabrication, what techniques we need and what machines we need. And this has been driven a lot of our work. We also have been looking at the past. This is a pavilion that we did in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, using stereotomy principles, how we can look at principles from the past, from construction, and adapt them into new innovative tools, and through new tools bring them back to life. So basically, this is very much looking at the same principles of a stone building now through robotics, and we had this pavilion. So we are trying to learn from the past to improve the future. This started a lot of years ago, like when we built the first shell in Mexico City, 2011, really kind of trying to bring learning from Candela, trying to see how the geometries were built, and bringing local labor, bringing a lot of the very, very experienced and beautiful craftsmanship in Mexico to work with us. We also built and we started to progress from there. This is a topology optimized shell structure that we built a few years later, and it has been now moved around Mexico City to different places. Very interesting stories. But trying to look at also how can we reduce the amount of material, how can we be more efficient, and how can we do this using local workers, local craft, local skills, and only the machines that we have in the very specific spaces where we need them. In 2018, I had the opportunity to collaborate with a blog research group and with Zaha Hadid Architects to build Knit Candela for the first exhibition in Mexico City of Zaha Hadid, and also there was Acadia also at the time. So this was very exciting, a really great opportunity. And something here that was really important when collaborating with kind of this very sophisticated design and engineering techniques was to look at that like hierarchical use of technologies. Where do we need to be very precise, have very high levels of precision with robotics, laser cutters, CNC machines, and where we can use the local labor and the local techniques and let them do what they do best in their work, and actually get them very excited about working with us. So this project required quite a few months of really a lot of rationalization and a lot of talking into how can we how can we get this hybrid mix between very high technology, very sophisticated design, and local skills and local labor. And we also have been looking a bit deeper into not only the overall shape, but how can we affect laminations? How can we go deeper into the material? So like look at hybrid lamination techniques. How can we express the structures into the final project? And also how can we use, this is like a project that we do using like curve crease folding, for example. How can we get geometry out of flat materials that can be easily transported, that we don't have to be moving materials that are already on a 3D shape, on volumetric form, but that are made flat. So we look at the different aspects of the construction process. Where can we improvise? How can the hierarchy of technology be applied? And where will it be critical to apply it in order to change the result? We know that not everything has to be robotically done, not everything has to be new. So we are looking at a lot of this. It's about the material, is it about the lamination, is it about the fabrication? Also, a lot of hybrid construction. In this case, we're just using like a stick frame construction, use timber framing, and then we're only using robotic hot wire cutting to add those very special elements that make the spatial experience, that improve the spatial experience, that make it look unique, that give it a better life for the people that will use this space. So where is technology required, and how can we be more efficient in the use of technology while keeping local traditions, while keeping local ways of building, while keeping local techniques at the core of what we do? And this is work that we are doing on a studio in Penn about like hybrid laminations, like working into like different species of wood. How do they work, and how can they also be used to make shapes lighter weight but more resistant? So there's a lot of work that we do into material that are applied to architectural geometry and to ways of fabrication methods. And this is also what we have been doing into like looking at raw materials. Like, do we need to process materials? Do we need to use a dimensional lumber, dimensional materials that are already prefabricated to be able to create these geometries, or can we actually engage with raw materials exactly in their condition and use techniques like AI, like scanning, to be able to process them and to create different shapes? This is a pavilion that we built in 2023 in collaboration with IAC in my shop. So like trying to really look at a tree fork and a raw lumber. And we also do a lot of engagement activities where we kind of get robots out of the lab, bring them to people, so that to kind of remove that mysticism around robotics that kind of, I think, keeps a lot of people alienated. So these are some installations that we have done where robots are scanning, drawing people, playing with people. They have been very successful in kind of getting young people really interested in the industry and in technology. And I think something that I really like a phrase that I really like is by Francis Carré, who kind of says, the more local materials you use, the better you can promote the local economy and build local knowledge, which also makes people proud. And this is really, really important. We see that when we use new techniques of building, when we use robotics, when we use new geometries, people, the crafts, the tradesmen get really excited. They want to work with us. They want to learn. They want to upskill. They want to be part of this change. So that's a lot. That has been really fundamental to the work that we do. And in this spirit is that we founded the Circular Factory. The Circular Factory is a micro factory fabrication shop. Right now, Circular Factory 1 is in Roatan, which is a little island in the Caribbean out of the coast of Honduras, and it's really isolated. The idea to build there was because there's this sophisticated project designed by Sahadi, which is starting to get built in Roatan. And of course, when you're talking about sophisticated geometries, a lot of the things is, can we import these? Can we get this from Europe? Can we get this from the United States? And what we try to say is, well, no, can we actually bring the machines, develop a software platform that can enable local people to work with the machines and to fabricate this on site or near site, and actually bring the economy, the economy that will be benefited from building this kind of projects into the region, as opposed to just importing everything, in which case the local economy doesn't get any benefit. So we took this challenge. It was a very, very extreme challenge. It's not easy to build, to even bring robots or bring anything or bring yourself into remote locations. We have been working on this project now for 4 years. We develop a digital platform in which this geometry is taken from the architects, is rationalized into different parts and different pieces. In this case, the different processes. For example, if the pieces have to be planed, then glued, then milled. So all of this gets digitally done. So you go from a geometry into the different components, also based on the dimensions of the machines, but we cannot fabricate anything bigger than the machine. Also, in this case, the dimensions of the tools existing on this place. For example, there are no cranes, so we have to do everything with only telehandlers, with very limited load capability. So we're trying to get the geometry into dimensions that can be done locally. Then based on that, we design a shop. We design a shop where all of this can be done with different tools, not only digital tools, but also a lot of analog tools like Jointer Planner, the table saw, circular saw, all of these. And we also started to engage with the locals that could know these. We, of course, had to develop a very robust data workflow platform for the design to be communicated to every person in the shop, but also to be communicated to the machines to generate the codes, and also to the designers. So they can work with us, so the designers can be working with us and can be saying, what can be fabricated? How can we optimize the geometry for fabrication from the get-go, and not like later on the process as it's traditionally done? And in our platform, we of course have all of the different machines. We enable access for all our stakeholders, like the investors can also access, but also the designers, the people on the shop, myself, our fabrication lead. Like what is going on? What is the bill of materials? How many timber, how many glue? What are the dimensions? So people can see what they are going to do. They can see which is the sequence of the different processes that they have to go through. And then they can also be working with this. So here they can look at the different parts, for example, of this specific of one of the units. They can find them by case, by identity, then they know to which building it corresponds. They know which part it is. They can have access to the geometry, because it's very important that they know what they are going to be building. They can see the bill of materials like adhesive, wood, brackets, screws, dowels, and they can see what are the sequences that is going on. And of course, here then all of our people on the shop, they kind of log in. They put how the process is going, whereas they finish it, whereas there is an error. And they also log how many human time it's taking, how long it's taking for the machine. Unsupervised time is when pieces are drying or this kind of stuff. So all the people that come to us, they are starting to learn, and they also are learning how to use the tools, but also they can be part of the process and part of the fabrication of all of these pieces. So. And then in this case, for example, you download the G code if it's for the CNC, or the robot or the code for the robot. Otherwise, they just keep doing it. So really trying to allow access for all the locals into the shop and to work with us. This is our shop in Ronan. It has been now up for working for a year and a half. We have a lot of different machines. We have around 15 people working with us. I'm very happy to say that out of the 15 people, 5 of them are women that are working on the shop, that are really kind of very excited to be with us, that maybe they will not have access to a career or to do anything before, especially and now especially in this kind of economies, people like women are kind of housewives, mothers, and there's not really a lot more, and they're really excited working with us. That's something that I have been really trying to enforce really hard. And this is a demonstrator that we did for the Venice Biennale 2 years ago in 2023, using all of our machines and of the different processes that we have in the shop. And with that, thank you very much. And I hope to continue this conversation. Thanks.
Thank you, Alicia. Such an amazing work you've done, all the efforts put into democratizing and making a lot of interesting structures. Thank you. So now we'll head out to Vanessa Sattele, which is our next invited. She's a product designer and professor at the Industrial Design Center of Research in UNAM, where she leads the Artificial Intelligence and Design Lab and focuses on co-creative processes at the intersection of AI, creativity, and design. With experience of global firms like Philips Design Research, Toyota, and Smart Design, her work has earned awards such as Idea Award and If Concept Award. And she has been featured in international congresses like DRS in Boston 2024. And she's currently pursuing a PhD at the Faculty of Arts and Design in UNAM, and her research bridges between academia, industry, and innovation in design. So welcome, Vanessa. Very happy to have you here. So go ahead.
Thank you, Ronan, and also DigitalFUTURES for the invitation. I'm very excited to be here today. Let me just wait. maybe, yeah, I have some, I don't know why it's not, yeah. So, thank you for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here today. So I'm a product designer. I used to work for several years in companies like Ronan said, and then I switched to the academic field. And now I'm a full-time teacher at the Industrial Design Research Center, which is located at the architecture faculty in Mexico City. And this Industrial Design Research Center is forming students at the bachelor level, but we also do research in parallel as teachers. So I started to become really interested in AI technology around 2 years ago. I think before it was always something that was done more by programmers, by specialized people that needed to be able to code. And the results were really low quality. So it was not really something that you could say, I can really actually use this in my project. But as we all remember, 2 years ago, this Mid-Journey boom started and everyone was using these kind of tools. And I think in the beginning it was still quite raw, but now you can really actually make quite elaborate images and also really define the style you want. And I don't know if this is something that it fascinates me, but at the same time it kind of concerns me in a way. So I started becoming really interested what happens at the beginning of the creative project when you start introducing these kind of new super tools into the design process. And I am starting to do a PhD now at the Arts and Design faculty also at UNAM. And my project has to do with this. What happens when you start introducing these tools in the beginning of the creative design process? And we started last year, LIA, which is the AI and Design Lab within the Industrial Design Research Center. So we have the classrooms, and then in the top floor, we have this kind of research area, which I was also one of the responsible persons to lead all this area. Back in 2018, there was a big remodelation of this area. So each full-time teacher has their own kind of lab. And in this lab, we have students collaborating in different formats like social service or practice, professional practice, as well as doing their thesis project. And currently I have 5 students. For some reason, they're all women. It was not something that I particularly, I mean, I really love working with women, but they're all very interested in this new technology. And we do different kinds of activities. This is an example of a workshop we did together with students to start implementing these tools, but in a really responsible way. And really start questioning what happens when you start using these tools and make questions. So these are like short workshops. We also do workshops with professors. And last year we also worked within the project workshop, which is an assignment for students in the 7th semester that I teach. It's like Mondays and Thursdays, 4 hours. And they do their projects. And this was the first semester that we actually implemented AI as a tool within the classroom. So teachers are really fostering the use of AI, but in a way that we question what happens, right? Like the students have to really think critically what happens when they use these tools. This was a project for a social organization called Placemaking. It was a project to make social spaces within Mexico City like this areas that are maybe abandoned pockets within the city that are being transformed into parks for children, playgrounds. And we did research interviews with people, but at some point in the creative process, we also used AI. And it was really interesting to see what the students were thinking about the use of these technologies. We also do material to communicate like the proper use of this technology. This was some cards that we made, where each card was like a tip that how can you use AI in your design process. But when you flip it in the back, it also tells you what are the positive points, but also what are the maybe the points you should be really looking for, or maybe also negative points that you should watch out for. This is like another tool that we worked on, which was how to map a creative process with an AI tool. So what happens when the designer starts using this tool, and what are the cognitive processes that are happening? And I think what is really new about this kind of tool is that it's not a thinking tool. I mean, it's just an algorithm and it's a machine, but it communicates like a person or like a colleague. So in a way, the communication that you have with this tool is something really new. It's not, you cannot talk to Rhino or you cannot talk to Keyshot, but you can really communicate to AI in a very natural way. So what happens when you do that in your own design process? And what is really what we are really looking into now is how can designers design their own tools to be able to streamline their process, but also get inspired. And we have now new possibilities that we didn't have before. Now you can, maybe you don't really need to know how to code. You can just tweak some existing AIs. Like ChatGPT has this tweaked AIs that you can program for your own needs. So I think here also the creative aspect of a product designer comes out in a way that you have to really think, how will you instruct this AI to give the results that you want? So this is like a color material finish prompt generator. So this is like a AI that is programmed to give you random materials for inspiration, transform that into a prompt that is really detailed to be used in a text-to-image model so that you can get a really high-quality image. And it can also generate mood boards based on your material. So in a way, it's like a tool that a designer made to get some ideas. And I think this becomes really interesting because here the designer is actually becoming like an art director, taking this AI and instructing it and tweaking it into a certain way so that it makes some kind of automatized loops, which then you put into other AIs. So you have like all these, I call them almost like helpers, right? That are doing things in parallel for you and then present you with some results that then you choose to maybe use or not. So I think here the role of the product designer is actually really changing because maybe you're not modeling so much anymore, or you're not sketching so much anymore, but you're actually instructing this technology to do what you would like. And I think that is really maybe like the next step for the designers. So this image shows kind of the workflow for this prompt generator. So It's a tweaked GPT AI that was designed with an intent. Then you generate these prompts that are texts that then you put into another text-to-image model, such as Crea, which is the one we used. And you get these materials, and then you get some more images which then you can tweak again. So these are kind of examples made by this AI. Something that is interesting for me is that the AI just gave me these suggestions of materials. So it was like like sort of you go through a magazine or Pinterest, but now it's the AI that gives you maybe some ideas. And here you can see, like, this is a text prompt with the image of the material, and then you can make this mood board. So the mood board mode was also something that was programmed. And then you can get all these more advanced images. So these are just some examples. And to finalize, I think this is a new fascinating field where we have this concept of co-creativity with these tools, where there is a sort of interaction with the shared product, which is the result, but also between the collaborators. Thank you so much. And I would love to keep in touch. This is my email. And we also have Instagram, so please follow us, Lia CD UNAM. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Such a great work with AI, how it's developing, which is a very important issue nowadays, and how women students are coming very interested into it, which is great. So now we'll go with Claudia Escutia. Claudia is a graduate from UNAM, and she went on exchange with the Universidad Federal de Rio de Janeiro. She specializes in architecture that integrates technology and sustainability with experience at firms like Moya Design Partners, CRTKL, and HKS. She currently serves as architecture manager at Studio Domus, leading innovative and sustainable high-rise residential projects. She is an accredited lead green associate and AIA associate, and she champions education and idea exchange as catalysts for meaningful change in the built environment. So, Claudia, are you around there?
Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm very happy to be here with you. Just turning on my video. Hello, everyone. And yes, just let me know if you can see the screen. Okay, so.
Not yet. Are you sharing it on Zoom?
Yes, I'm pretty sure.
It's already there. There we go.
There we go.
We don't see your presentation though.
Just at this very moment, my computer decided to think, so it's processing. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Now we see your presentation.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, well, first of all, I wanted to be more like hands-on because in this case, I wanted to speak about two projects, and most important of everything, I wanted to say thanks because the following projects are the incredible result of a teamwork. And I want to give special thanks to all of my colleagues and principals for allowing me to share a part of the process. And well, to begin, of course, we have like our everyday lives in architecture, and we all have this big challenge that comes from what happens when we have a big idea, right? How we get that big idea into reality. And
I'm sorry to interrupt, Claudia. The bar underneath your screen is like going like that. I don't know if you can do something to stop tilting it.
yeah, it's something about my computer is like processing the whole presentation.
Okay.
So I don't know if I can make it stop.
Well, if not, go ahead.
Okay. Okay. And so, well, coming back to the conversation, it's just that, well, the most difficult part is how we get concepts to be done, right? And so there is technology. And so technology can help us, if we have the right tools, we can transform ideas into tangible realities. And so we can ensure the workflows run smoothly. And also it helps us in the reality, because software actually helps us mitigating design and construction risks all over the project life cycle. And so on the first project, this is a Studio Domus project that is called San Cayetano, that is actually the access building for the factory. This is a 200 square meters building. It's in 2 levels, and I want to showcase a short video. I think I'm having some issues with the processing of my computer, but it doesn't matter. Okay, we can keep going. And so from the video that you saw, in general, the project was developed using Revit, Revit BIM 360, because we work everything in the cloud. And so that makes us easier to work with the with all the specialties, all the MEPs and landscape and so on. Another tool that was very useful for us was using Revit Insight and Solar Analysis and Scape VR. Also, we used Climate Consultant, and the result was that sometimes it's easier if you think, if you're not so ambitious, and I want to be careful with that word, but sometimes when you go simpler, it's easier for you to land all of these big ideas. And so sometimes less is more. Complex geometries are not always the best option when it comes to grounding a project. If a geometry cannot be documented, it is most likely that it can be built, right? So we were very efficient. We decided to go for a very simple form. And actually, when we were dealing with the form, it was just a mass that was being adapted as a result of all of the zones that were affected by the sun. So that's why I'm representing here all of these diagrams about the conditions of the site. Also, we took account some of the measures that were recommended by LEED and by WELL, using sunlight, how to filter air, how to filter light, and so on. And also, it was a very, very good tool to use some other softwares like Enscape, AR, and VR, and I will leave this QR for you to use if you are curious. And so I also have it. In for me. Let me know if I can share it to you. Okay, I'm going back to it. So if you go into that QR, you will see this navigation. And so one tool that helped us a lot was to have the capability of navigate live 360, all of the spaces. And so this gave us like a very different perspective. It is almost like if you were in there, navigating, leaving the space, having like the precise experience of it. And the surprising thing that the delivered project was very, very similar, as you can see it. So I would recommend it very much because it's very precise, and it helps us mitigate every single detail that can happen badly in the construction site. Okay, and coming back to the presentation then. And then this project is very special. I was lucky enough to be part of this amazing women team. This project is from HKS. It's called The Bubble. It's a full immersive experience, and I will play also the video.
Imagine a space where nature, technology, and imagination merge, a place of life exploration and start. Today's hectic world stresses us. But what if there was a place in the city to find respite from it? Welcome to The Bubble, a revolutionary concept in urban architecture and hospitality that redefines what a space is. The innovative bubble offers a tailored experience that helps you reconnect yourself and your surroundings. Using emerging technology, it allows you to feel at ease in your environment, even if you're far from home. The bubble sculptural design is inspired by droplets and splashes, lead users on a journey guided by curiosity through a landscape where small moments connect with a larger experience. As a beacon of urban renewal, the bubble transforms underutilized areas into vibrant green spaces that foster community engagement and sustainable living. Access the bubble through our mobile or web app. Easily find and reserve your ideal location. Once your bubble is booked, you can customize your experience. The bubble's interior transforms using advanced LED technology. Whether it's the majestic Sahara or cascading wonder of miniature, enjoy a personalized, immersive environment tailored to your every need. All seamlessly transform into your preferences and clinical life. Inside the bubble, you can program your experiences to explore. Discover how the spaces transform seamlessly, evolving into super activities and desires. Your senses are activated for what could be an hour, for a 7-course meal, or for a series of enchanting escapes. The bubble offers three immersive realms: evoke, where culinary creativity meets design, dreamscape.
Okay, and in this case study, the software we used is Rhino, Revit, SketchUp, all the Adobe Suite, AI Midjourney, InfraWorks, and I wanna recall that this project was the last year professional project winner for the Radical Innovation contest, and the most important key part of this project is that this is an AI project that was conceived for AI use. And so this image showcases all of the different kinds of iterations. You cannot imagine how many iterations we had when we were looking for the idea, the principal idea that we wanted. As you can see, some of them were very different from the last ones, and so the biggest challenge was to have the best prompt to showcase what we had in our minds. And another key point for this project is that the team was very, very diverse. There were not only architects, but we had an amazing interior designer. We had an amazing landscape designer. So this was more of a multidisciplinary team with multidisciplinary thinking. That was the most important part. And so in general, for my conclusions, I would like to say that we don't have to fight with technology. We have to embrace all of these resources. We have to embrace that, for example, AI is not competing with us, but it's another tool we can use in the early stages of the creative design. Another thing is that this role we have as an architect is evolving. We are now, I could say that we are transforming ourselves into some kind of programmers because we already spend so many hours in front of the screen, right? And also that, but at the same time that we have we have to be very, very careful because in this moment of our era, we have a lot of information and it's easy to get lost. So we have to, if you could ask me for some tips, I would say you have to know your software and you have to know how to use it to have a better workflow and to know which tools serve you in a quicker way, which ones are faster. Also, to use software that is easier to export, import throughout platforms, and to avoid loss of information, of course. And finally, that in this, amidst all of this population of softwares, we can get crazy, we can get overwhelmed. There's a lot of information, but at the end, it's just about we can't do everything by ourselves. We have to be in multidisciplinary teams. We have to have multidisciplinary mindset. And so as long as we share ideas, as long as we exchange with others, we can have like this kind of projects, I guess.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you, Claudia. Great presentation, great work. So I guess it's my turn.
That's right.
It's my turn to present. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. It's not something so great, but I did. I'm a professor at UNAM, and I did my PhD at the Polytechnic in Catalonia. And since I came back to UNAM, I started as a teacher, and I started pushing forward technology since I saw that the context around the international context has really pushed forward. So me being considered myself as a digital native, I founded the LATE, the Laboratory for Architectural Design and Technology Experimentation. So I'm going to show you a brief presentation. Let me see, and here I go. And I guess you can see it now. So I'm going to talk about emerging configurations, how the stakeholders, how the people has evolved, how teams that probably started with really male-based, and how integration is moving forward, and also how the materials and context and some other configurations are being developed here in Mexico. So or at least pushed by us. So one thing we've done is a critique about what the models of measurements are usually taken into account, because like the modeler, that it's a 6-foot Caucasian person that actually is left-handed, and it's probably European based. It's not a model that it's widespread in Mexico, and half of the population are not even men. So it made sense to go the other way around, and to make that every person could be their own model. So we did something we called Modeler Me, which was based on a algorithm that makes the calculations to make the golden ratio for every person, so they can know what their measurements are, and their different sizes and proportions, and we also even came with sticking to pets, because pets are also taken away, and there's a lot of people having pets, and the distance this is on the 5th version, the distance and time it takes for them to get to our university, which is like amazing. It is regular that they take 2 or 3 hours to take to go to our university. So commuting, usually it's painful. And also, just to make it a little bit fun, we also ask people what superpower were they developing. So we actually we sometimes take pictures with people that like to have their picture taken with their Modeler Me, and then we cut them with laser cut them with acrylics from the divisions of the pandemia. So we're recycling plastics, which we also think it's a good thing. So, well, that's an experiment that it's still ongoing. We want to make a 6th version. This is 5.0 so far. So then we're going to publish it, but it's something I wanted to share with you. On the other hand, we're also developing some pieces of houseware, and some of them are going to be furniture, which we want to make them open source. So they're going to be available on the internet for people to fabricate. So probably they can go with the files, with the G-code files, and go to a makerspace or a Fab Lab and probably have them built so they're press fit. So this model doesn't have not a nail or a screw, so it should be kind of easy. And the optimization we're doing is like really well, I think good. We're optimizing so in one board you can obtain a furniture piece. So this is part of what we're doing. And this is already an example of two workbenches we did, which we call the Robody, which are assisted workbenches for digital fabrication with robotic purposes. And so it's not only having furniture for daily use, but also for specific use that may also integrate some specifics as electronics. So we're also going into electronics and communication with Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and communicating different tools, but also inserting in this Robody we inserted manual power pieces of tools that are economic, which are more economic than the ones you would be placing on a robotic arm. So the tools communicate with the robot, so you can have a parallel way of building some pieces and fabricating, which is very interesting because it makes it better than an automatic changer, and of course more economic, and that has to do with our context. So this is the other part of the electronics, a gripper that goes into the robotic arm with the capabilities of sending signals that we already have a piece, right? So and it has a battery, so it can run without a connection to electricity, and it has a cam holder, of course, so we can film stuff. So in terms of press fitting and making this kind of furniture, we also went to the oblique, trying to make every time more difficult things. And after that, we started developing possibilities with curved wood. So this is a pavilion with it that is press fit, and it also it's 100% wood with no nails, no screws, in order to be an option of making structures for open spaces. And of course, our beloved ofrenda of Dia de Muertos, that also has to do with traditional methods and traditional tradition and culture, of course. And this was also optimized, and it cost around $150, which is almost nothing for this kind of piece. So it's like a really way of optimizing resources and mixing, blending, hybridizing with culture and ways of doing and thinking things. And well, this is another way of going further with fibers and taking curvatures to the extreme. And for this year, we went a step back, and we said, okay, now we're gonna go with double curvature wood. And normally it is easy to bend wood if you have like steam, or if you glue lam and you apply a lot of heat. But this was a cold press, which is a method we're using, which is kind of easier to go. So we did different proofing with the curving patterns and understanding the size of the pattern towards the curvature that it needed. So we thought we could do a pavilion that could be shaped on different sphere sections that probably could communicate and become also a pavilion that could go one way or the other, shifting the sections from one side to the other. So we finally came around with the design of intermediate curving pattern that would fit perfectly between the other patterns. So we would make a 3-layer sheet for this pavilion that with this pattern would be able to be not filtering water. So and we've made several algorithms so we could have all the pieces made individually with laser cut and CNC. So this is as complex as we can be, or at least we've been able to go forward with double curvature bent wood pavilions, self-supporting, and of course, it has to be demountable and also non-expensive. So all the variables may take us forward to make it a different shelters in the future. So we have every time we have more women in the team, which is great, and some of them are the leaders. That happened with the Cane Pavilion. Actually, Diana has been a leader in our team, and Cynthia also was the one that went all the logistics, and she was in charge of making this happening. And well, that was fabricating the press, because making the tool sometimes is half the way, and making the real object of the product is the other way. So we pressed the wood with some weight, and then the 3D puzzle came around. We had to do something like there was only one way of putting pieces together, and one in a specific order. So this is how we managed to assemble this, and it was exhibited last year on the last probably in September in Santo Domingo, and here's the final pavilion already there, and you can see the team. So actually we dismantled the pavilion, and we took it back to our to our school, and nowadays it is sitting in our school, so people can have some tacos, quesadillas, and tortas underneath it. And we're trying to understand how it develops, because when we assembled it, it was like the most rainy season, or the rainiest days we had in Mexico City. And actually the day we took it back to our school, we assembled it. It rained from 7 a.m. until midnight. So it was always poured in water. So now afterwards it has been developing different it's kind of springing back. So we're understanding nowadays how wood is behaving with water in external conditions. And it is important to point out that in Mexico, it is not common to build with wood, not common at all. So we're not only doing complex geometries with wood, but also in a context that is not used to this. So well, we're very happy with this kind of projects. So this is my last slide. So I hope you enjoyed. I'm just sharing pretty much one of the important projects and some other stuff we've done. So probably should head already for the discussion moment, if you agree to do so. So I will ask you to probably open your cameras and ask for Liam to kickstart the discussion.
Yeah, maybe I could just kick things off. This is actually, when we use the word hybridities, we're kind of thinking, well, there are lots of hybridities there could be. There's I think many of you have studied in Barcelona or in Switzerland or in London or whatever. There is that obviously happening. There's also a kind of hybridity going on between the kind of designing and fabricating. I guess, but the thing that I find really intriguing right now is that with all the emphasis on robotic fabrication, in fact, the traditional structure of the architectural office doesn't actually lend itself to that. The traditional architectural offices don't tend to have robotic arms. I mean, the few examples that we do see are in a kind of new type of hybrid practice. I'm thinking in particular of the way that Nagami, for example, operates, whereby they design and fabricate. It's a kind of total vision. Or indeed, that's Manuel Jimenez Garcia, who was teaching at the Bartlett. Also, Gilles Redson, who was with him, has a kind of a sort of design build, I guess you call it, firm. And Gramazio, Colo, and so on. There's a kind of coming out of academia. There's a kind of hybrid practice, which actually is quite new. It's quite new. And the question I want to ask is that I heard that in Mexico, maybe I'm wrong, but Luigi Pacheco was telling me this, that in Mexico, you're trained almost as an architect and a kind of contractor fabricator at the same time. At least standard education is not quite as discrete as it is in the West. And I'm just wondering to what extent the Mexican context, if that is correct, lends itself to this new hybrid form of practice. I mean, it seems to me, just to if I could put it in a nutshell, I think with the use of these tools, not just AI, but also AI, and especially. What we need to design is not necessarily buildings, but the future of practice. And I think that is the fascinating thing that is emerging, is how we're seeing these new types of practice. So yeah, maybe I can leave that question with you. To what extent does Mexico, is it in a better position because of the way that you are architecture is taught? Is that correct that you have a kind of degree in architecture and construction, so they're not totally discrete?
I think it's a really good question. I think Dinorah wants to go. Go ahead, Dinorah.
Sorry, but I'm very fresh on that because I'm teaching and just graduated 7 years ago. So in Mexico it's different, and Ron can also complete this idea because he have a lot of time in academia more than me. But I said in Mexico it's about money. It's about opportunities. The people are not making a master's degree not because they cannot do it, because they need to work. They need to generate money. And that's why in Mexico the career takes 5 years, but the 5 years when you finish the career, the bachelor, you are already ready to do everything. You can build, you can provide whatever service you want to do. And for example, that's why the majority of students do not feel the necessity of study a master's degree. And in my experience, if you want to study something like a master's degree, and also if you want to study offshore outside Mexico in other country, it's very contradictory a bit, like happens to me when I was in Switzerland, because for example in Switzerland in ETH the people are saying like robots are better than humans and it's the future of construction, and for me it's so dramatic, so violent. And here if you talk with the most famous architects here in Mexico, and also with the constructors or the builders or whatever person on site in the construction, they say we don't need machines. And it's very important to be empathic with the context, with the political also situation and social, not only with the capital. And that's why, for example, Cobot, like last week, they put a commercial in Instagram about oh yeah, like why you are putting a brick and then on top another brick with your hands, you can do it with a machine. That's why in the academia in Mexico, the things are not changing too much, because academia in Mexico do not have money, do not have a lot of support. They have, and for example, well, Ron are more in that because he's in the biggest public university, but also the private university do not have money to do projects as ETH and as IAC in Barcelona. We do not have research groups. We do not have these kind of opportunities. And also the salaries are so low. So that's why the professors have to have a half work and also their own practice, or this happens to me. I have to teach in 2 universities and also I have my own job. And also I have a four job also. So to survive. And here, that's why, well, this is my opinion. In Mexico, the architects are not changing the practice too much. I'm done buying robots because they don't think it's necessary. And also, it's not, well, the context is very, very different.
Mm-hmm. Is it different in Canada, Alicia? Do you find that there are different opportunities there compared to Mexico, or yeah?
Yeah, like if I can talk to that. So I like architects, you're right. Architects in Mexico, when you graduate, you can build, like you have a license to build up to 3 stories high. So there are limitations, right? But whereas in Europe, you cannot do anything. So that's a big difference. However, I do think that that also creates a lot of opportunities. I think Canada, and I agree with Dinorah, like I don't think a lot of places will have, or almost not any other place will have the amount of resources that maybe Switzerland or Germany have, and that's kind of a one-off situation, which is really amazing and fantastic what they have built. But I do think that in North America, and including Mexico, of course, we do have a lot of more resources, a lot of more natural resources. Canada is loaded with natural resources. But I think the biggest advantage of Mexico, and why we love to do a lot of the shells, and we are also working in Latin America right now, is that there are opportunities to kind of the system is more flexible in a way that you can leapfrog some of the regulations and some of the red tape and some of the things that maybe even in Europe constrain this innovation to go into mainstream. Like here we saw a lot of stuff in ETH, we see a lot of stuff in Stuttgart and Barcelona, but it does not permeate into the construction industry yet. It's starting, and I think that's fascinating that we are starting to see it. Canada is a similar situation. Canada, I think, has maybe more of the issues of it's a different issue on the place that there are more resources, but there are not skilled workers. There are population. There is not enough population, right? It's a very low population country. Mexico, I think, has a lot of high skilled trades. Like the people in Mexico are really, really high skilled. Steel welders, super high skilled. Concrete. When we did need Candela, the quality of the concrete was just amazing, and that was all done by hand. And I think that what is missing, and something that we really, or I am being personally really trying to work on, especially with the introduction of robotics and of new techniques, is how can we bring that pride to workers in other economies? And I feel that Mexico still workers or concrete workers, there's still pride in the work because they come from a tradition, because they are apprentices, because they are in the construction industry for their whole family for generations. There is pride in their, and they know they are really good. Like carpenters in Mexico, they know they are really good and they will charge really high salaries. Whereas in other countries, there is not that pride. Like people in the construction industry is really, they could not get any other job in their life and they hate doing it and they are really low skilled. So that's where where we are trying to get machines or robotics as a way of upskilling, getting them excited. Young people, only in Canada, only 7% of the young people want to join the construction industry, which is terrible when you think about the housing crisis and when you hear all of this, right? And only 7% of young people want to join the construction. So who is going to build this stuff? And they don't want immigration, and you have all of these other political problems. So I think that when we have a few robots here with the city, and the city has been very supportive of us. When we talk about people that maybe a young apprentice says, hey, it's not only the construction industry like boring as you might expect it to be, but there are robotics, there are also digital technologies. They do get excited. And I believe, I cannot prove it yet, but I believe that by upskilling, by introducing digital technologies in methods of construction, we can excite young generations to join the construction industry and to be part of the work. And maybe we are never going to get the skills that maybe the trades have in Mexico and Canada, but we can excite young people to join the construction industry. And that, I think, will be very beneficial if we are going to solve any of the housing crises and others that we currently have. So that's where I really see a big opportunity of digital technologies with young people.
Maybe
I would like to add, Alicia, because I agree with you. And I would like to see it that, on the other hand, that we have limitations, but I don't like to see it as limitations, but as a condition, right? That if we get to do something here in Mexico, it would be different. So it's an opportunity, and it forms this almost likely a virgin area because it's not oversaturated. There's not many people that is specialized that can be working here. So I can see that maybe we can, it's not about what happens, but about how are we going to make it. And that's the future I see in that.
Perhaps I could just throw something out there. The other thing Ronan took me around to see some Louis Barragan work. I mean, beautiful stuff, right? Beautiful, beautiful work. But what I didn't realize until he told me that Louis Barragan was a developer. So I think you've also got this unusual history. And of course, there are other developers, developer architects around in the West, or a few. But I'm wondering whether that itself is quite a common thing in Mexico, and whether that could be a kind of another model that we could develop. Because Yeah, is it common, or was it just a one-off with Luis Barragan?
No, it's totally common. Like Luis Barragan was a civil engineer. He studied in Guadalajara, civil engineer. After this, he started to practice, and right now is what we know. I think Felix Candela is another kind of topic, very different, like Luis Barragan for me, in my experience. I think Barragan is, I think he's like a mix in between art, lighting and architecture. But I think in terms of experimentation, in terms of shapes, I think Felix Candela is also very powerful. But the problem here, Felix Candela and also Foster asked me when I was in the Foster Foundation, why nobody's doing again the work similar like Felix Candela. It's because the cost of the structures, because Felix Candela was poor all of his entire life alive. He was always suffering with the economic prices of his buildings, because the buildings were very extremely very expensive because the labor. He used a lot of labor work, and I think this is an opportunity, for example, for technology nowadays, that we can do a cheaper practice and also very efficient as Felix Candela. I think right now we are living that. Yeah, that's my opinion in my experience. But also, like, I always have a very close relationship with I think with the most influenced architects here in Mexico, like Tatiana Bilbao and Frida Escobedo, blah blah. And they are talking about sustainability, but they are not really interesting about technology. I think they are keeping in the mind about more local and ancestral technologies. That's also technology, but they are not really interested in machines. I'm not really pretty sure about artificial intelligence, and I think this is another topic that maybe Vanessa and Claudia can talk about. I'm not really deep on that, but I think in my experience also, because the architectural offices takes a lot of like economical resources here in Mexico, you need a computer. Imagine if you need a robot. So I think this is something that we need to realize. And also because our context is not the same like Europe, it's not the same like US, and not the same like Canada or like Australia. I think it's more similar like China, more India, more like that, because as Alicia said, our manufacturing is so strong. We already saw it with Liz Barragan and Felix Candela. So it's like, but also other fact, like the people in the construction, they are like craftsmen, and the government categorized them as a craftsman, like officially, because they learn all the capacities generation by generation, like by family. So for me, it's a very important thing to take also in consideration where we are talking about machines are going to replace. So I think we need to find, the how, I think, should be, we need to find the balance, because the digital era is here, and of course it's not going to stop. Right now, for example, all the immigrants in US, they just remove it because they want to introduce robotics. They want to introduce robot labor, and that's why Elon Musk is so happy. So I think in our case, we need to find a balance here in Latin America, how we can do it.
I think it's really interesting, the thing you said about finding a balance. And I am also not so appreciative actually of AI. It's more something, maybe it was more a concern that I had in particular because I see students using these technologies. So in a way, it is to me fascinating, right? Technologies has always been fascinating to us, and we apply it to the practice. But I think there is this risk of losing the context, the really local, the human part. For example, the images that AI produces are often like completely out of context. They are getting homogenized. So there's a lot of studies in literature where I'm actually quite fascinated by this. So I'm reading like a lot of literature about experiments made with designers, architects or product designers, where they made, for example, two groups, one using AI and one not. And then they compare results. And for example, some of the groups that used AI have similar ideas between them, right? So I think this risk of getting out of context and everything getting homogenized is really something that we have to think about. And I think like you have mentioned, the local materials, the local craftsmanship, the local knowledge is something really important. So how can we find a balance, and also, for example, with the students, make them really aware of the certain risks or bias that are happening when you use this technology, like the DRS paper we presented in Boston last year was about bias in user persona generation. So it's like these fictitious users that you can create with AI, and then they show you like this biased characters. So we made an experiment creating these user personas in Iztapalapa, and about the problem of water shortage in Iztapalapa. And then we were probing the AI to see if it really understands context and local issues. And we analyzed the biased results it gives you. And I think this is something that is really crucial because, for example, in Mexico, like as also has been mentioned, money is design and architecture, I think, are not so appreciated here as in other countries. So there's always less budget for the creative part. And I think we really have to think how to show what is our value, because if these tools are getting more easier to use, then at some point maybe someone can say, let's just skip the designer or the architect and make this really homogeneous AI designed houses, which are really not understanding anything about context. So I think we really need to communicate the value of design and architecture.
And I mean, Vanessa, I agree with the question of value. I think that's a crucial factor. In fact, when I've got a doctoral design student at FIU who's working on that, it's the key issue. How do you demonstrate your value? But I must say that I've had a very different experience. You know, for example, and maybe it depends on the prompts you're using and so on, but somebody said, oh, do a house extension. So I wrote a prompt with the word house extension in it. And what kind of surprised me or puzzled me at first was the fact that I kept on getting British-looking buildings and gloomy weather. I mean, Alicia knows all about gloomy weather from living in London, right, and in Cardiff as well. And it transpired that actually the term house extension is only used in the UK. So I was getting British buildings. And whenever I put kind of Louis Barragan, I quite like using Louis Barragan in my kind of work, but I don't just get the Louis Barragan colors. I get the kind of, Mexican sunlight, cactuses, bottle of tequila or something like that. It tends to actually, it is kind of weirdly contextualized in some sense. That is the problem in some sense about prompts, is they're not an exact science. They're associative in some ways. They bring with them certain aspects of their context. That's been my experience. That's quite a different one. But I do agree that, I think that we've got to be careful how we do teach, especially AI. And what is I think that what we're seeing now is a certain disruption that's happening, a disruption in terms of AI being used in the classroom. How do you ask for essays when they could be generated by generative AI, ChatGPT or something, and a disruption also from the use of robotics. And I think it's how do you take advantage of that and see about how you can use those to design a different future. And I think that is the interesting thing. And I mean, it's not without its challenges, but I particularly was struck because we had Manuel Jimenez Garcia just a few weeks ago, and he's obviously working at the level of furniture, but 3D printing. but he has to see the thing as a totality. He's got to understand whether or not it's going to be economically viable. And I think this is the thing that the real problem of practice in some way, in its standard ways, is that architects are designing in a very remote context without knowing about the fabrication. There's a big distance between the design and the fabrication. And once you bring them together, you're forced to address certain questions in a very real way. I was very impressed by the way that he had to address all those kind of questions. So that's why I think right now we're in an interesting moment where maybe we could start investigating a new form of practice that is using these tools and rethinking the logic of what we are. And I personally think that architecture itself needs to be rethought, because I think I don't know about Mexico, but I think it's in crisis in many countries for other reasons, even before the world of AI. But it's an opportunity too to rethink things.
Yeah, since I remember, since I was a kid in Mexico, we've been in crisis. So it's not like it comes and goes, it always stays. So we tend to know how to live with it and to optimize resources all the time. It's not like, well, this time we're gonna make it cheaper. It's always cheaper and cheaper and making it feasible, so it could be constructed if you want the objective done, of course. So yes, whenever you finish your degree, you're expected to be on site working. It's not like in other places that someone else is gonna bring a contractor and have the things done, and probably you would lose some communication. That it has some positive and negative things about it. Because if you're close to the site, you can do as Barragan, put a chair in front of the wall, and while they're building it, you can say, oh, tear that down. It's not the right position, So it has some really good things of the way we practice, but some negative, of course, because some specific or really high-tech things never arrive, or they arrive after many, many years. So I think putting tools in the hands of youngsters, of students, of people that want to push through this way of making things, it's a good thing. And sometimes I tell the students that come around, not all the technology is for everybody, and not everybody is for technology, because people, as Dinorah was pointing out, some really good architects here in Mexico, as Tatiana, as Frida, and others, are probably hyper modern architects that really are pushing the way of thinking and making into architecture in terms of what the meaning is, what the materials are built in, what's the usability, and not really paying attention to technology. Because craftsmen in Mexico, we have cheap labor, so because in another country, if you're in Switzerland, you would say, use a machine or use a person. Probably the machine would be cheaper, right? In Mexico, it's usually the other way around. So really known artists don't think about it. They just go through and use labor, because is a way, traditional way of doing it. And we have a lot of skillful workers, and we have something that I don't know how Mexican it is, but we call it to be entrón, like to go into things, be hands-on, be active. We're active. Mexican, we are always active in some way. So we always do things, normally good things, and yeah, craftsman is really good. So yeah, there's so many things, so many interesting issues. Yeah.
I think just to add something to that. Oh, sorry, Claudia.
Oh, no, I wanted to add something to what Ronan said, that maybe in the classroom, just to foster critical thinking, because they always go ahead. That's something that happens in Mexico. They are very creative, and they always find a way to bring to the classroom the homework made by AI. So we have to be a step ahead again. So what if, for example, we start, doing this dynamic where in early process, in the early creative process of the projects, we use AI and we discuss it with them, right? So it's now not like a taboo or like a prohibition or something that is not allowed, but instead something that we know it exists and we live with it, and we need to be, like, we need to create something with it.
Neil, if you agree, we probably should hit some questions of YouTube.
Yeah, can I just what I mean, Alicia wanted to say something as well, but I've got another.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Quickly.
Yeah, I was just going to just add to the previous conversation with Neil when you were talking about the developers, because I think that I just want to say that this is a systematic thing that have to change. And sometimes, like, I mean, we have a shop, a digital fabrication shop in Honduras, right, which is like Latin America. And the reality is that who pays for the digital fabrication tools is not the architect. And that is very clear. And we have been working with very talented and some of the best architects in the world. And the developer also doesn't want to pay for that because it's not their role, right? The developer wants to keep building more and more. However, what is the biggest problem for us to build? And I don't know how Manu addresses it, and I think I have to ask him actually, but I have spoke with this with Gilles and with Mihalis from AI Build. And the situation is like, how can we innovate in the construction industry and get the robots? It's not only about, oh yeah, we're going to build with robots. It comes to very fine issues of like insurance, or like who is going to insure the work if it's done by a robot and not in a traditional way? No one. So you have to find these loopholes. How can you make your company profitable? How can you have a startup that could be fabricating with robots and that the product is insured and that the contractor will be willing to use the product? So there are really a lot of pieces that I think is really important for us to address in the ecosystem, because it's not only architect, contractor, developer. There are all of these other people or layers that we tend to not, well, even when we teach architecture, or if the students just learn about digital, they will be able to do it. Well, no, they won't. Like, there are a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of things that really need to change. And I think that in that sense, Mexico and Honduras and other Latin American countries are really, really good opportunities. Also, India, we were in India last summer talking with Samit and with some other people there, and super exciting because there are opportunities to get through this, so to get to this red tape. So I think that the problem, and I think it's just important, is really multi-layered. And a lot of it comes to really boring stuff like insurance companies and these, right? But it's really what I think stops a lot of the progress of digital fabrication into construction, more than a negative attitude from architects or developers or contractors or workers.
Yeah, I mean, just to say, it's actually, it could be that, I mean, I think insurance is absolutely spot on. But let me just give you one story. There is a theory that there's a guy called Toby Walsh, who Toby Walsh writes about AI. He thinks we'll be banned from driving because in the end, self-driving cars will be more reliable than us. And when we drive on our own, insurance premiums will go up, and eventually people say it's too expensive, I won't bother, and we will be banned from driving. So I think personally, in the long run, AI is going to be actually, in insurance-wise, it probably becomes a more important thing. But absolutely, we have to think through all of these different questions. Can I just throw one more question out there before there's a question in the chat, and I would certainly say if anyone else wants to send a question from YouTube, please go ahead. But my final question is this: is that okay? The other thing that defines Mexico is you've just got your first ever female president, right? The first ever. Now, my question to this panel of female designers, is that changing things? Because typically I always associate Mexico as being slightly macho Latin culture where women don't have the same status. Are things changing in Mexico because of this?
Totally, yes. Totally, yes. Totally, yes. Like, I can tell you, I'm 31 years old, so I'm pretty young now. I don't know, but I will say the people in my age is feeling hope, is feeling like, oh, wow, now being a woman, you can do it. So, and there is a very emotional video, for example, for a little girl, she was representing Claudia in a school thing here in Mexico in a rural community. For me, this is something that it's impressive. The other day I did a little post in Instagram about this because, for example, in the two universities that I'm teaching, the two directors are women. I think right now in UNAM is going to be a woman. I think so. I have my suspicions. So right now, the women here in Mexico are taking a lot of importance in my experience. And other thing, that technology can be also a breach of communication because technology do not recognize genders. Technology only recognize 1 and 0. So right now, for example, most of the I don't know issues. That's why only the 3% in the construction sector are women is because our physical capacities. And right now, the machines are bringing us a new opportunity that we have to really take advantage.
Wow, that's good to hear. That's good to hear.
I think we're breaking the molds, so which is a good thing. It's not only our first female president. There are many, many important positions like the Senate and that has already had a woman in front. The deputies and also the juries, you know, all the important juries here in Mexico have been already presided by women. So yeah, it's an outstanding thing, and we're doing it before the US, which is even better, you know, and Canada,
That's
if
awesome,
I can take
Ron.
an account.
That's awesome.
So it's well, Mexico is showing that we're open. I mean, everybody has a possibility. It's not that only men would have opened the door, and I think that's a good thing. It's and also, yeah, the hope that Dinorah says, it's out in the street. It's so every young girl now can say, oh, so it is possible. I can be a president. Yeah. Probably choose a different party or stay in that one. I don't know, but that's a different issue. So yeah, and being able to take a position no matter what gender you are, it's great. Definitely, that's completely great. So yeah, we're pushing forward, and in some cases, before the US, I have to say it again.
I got to be careful what I say in the country that's my host, but I think there's a lot to be said for female leadership. I mean, Angela Merkel, I think, was a great president in Germany and so on. And sometimes strong men can be problematic in certain ways, but I will say no more. I will say no more.
I think it's very curious that we also have a coincidence with Trump. That's an amazing coincidence. I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, or timing.
Time, you mean?
Exactly.
Not even thinking.
I think it's an opportunity to Mexico, like right now.
I love that hat. I think it was Claudia was wearing. Your president was "Make America Mexican Again," Mama, which I thought was great. That was great. So we have. Do we have any more questions to the chat? We've got one there that maybe Ronan, I'll leave it to you. Hand it up to you to.
I'll grab the last one. I think we haven't addressed it. How would you bring these new approaches to technology to rural or vulnerable communities with fewer resources? Looking for more inclusive educational strategies, considering our country's challenges. Yeah, that's a big issue, actually. Somebody wants to go for it?
I think I can talk about the shop, and I mean, I think that these technologies actually are really good in getting like rural and vulnerable communities like leapfrog a lot of these problems and really getting it in technology. And something that we have with the shop, for example, we are in a community that there was no electricity, so it's all running out of a generator. And that kind of, it sounds like a problem, but the reality is that when you produce something, you know exactly how much each piece costs, like how much electricity goes on it, how much material goes on it. Everything has to be imported from abroad, so I cannot go to the shop and get a screw. That's the level to what we are working right now on the shop. So you really have to plan in advance. And I think that having technology allows us to track all of these, to track, like we use also algorithms to track all of these, to be able to plan ahead, to have our deliveries, to have our electricity consumption, again, our diesel. So I think that technology, and when you talk about communities, like, of course, they are not going to pay for the robots. That will be the investor that you get for your microfactory. You come, you bring it there, but you make them productive. And something that for me has been very powerful about the project in Rotan is like, all of these pieces were going to be imported from the US or from Europe, and now people in Rotan are making them, and it makes them so proud. And it's just like, I think it really changes communities, and it's a great opportunity. Some of the people that have been calling us about microfactories, about setting up, are in Africa, in the Serengeti, people that are building hotels, that how can they build them without importing stuff, with local materials, with local people. So I think that the whole movement to nearshoring, a fabrication is really, really helpful, and it's something that I really appreciate, because it's then bringing the machines and the technology to all of these communities that otherwise would not have other means of living, or will have very precarious means of surviving. And suddenly you have them doing robotic fabrication and doing, like, running a CNC, and this guy didn't know how to do math like 3 months ago. So I think it's a really, really fascinating, the same way as the mobile phone, the cell phone communicated suddenly all of Africa and a lot of isolated communities in Mexico, so that they only had one phone for the whole community. Now with mobiles like Oaxaca and this, you see people, they can talk, right? So the same, I think that it's a really fascinating moment that we are, and I think the opportunity is huge on bringing this technology to vulnerable communities, because it really improves their lives in ways that you cannot believe it. So I think it's really fascinating, and that's where we should be focusing on bringing them.
Definitely.
I think also maybe thinking about using the technologies. For example, I mean, this is a slightly different aspect, but in education, one hurdle is the payment of the programs. For example, with AI, you get these free trials, and after a few trials, then you get to stop, and then they ask you for money. And I think for us at UNAM, this is a big problem, because we need these licenses. And as was mentioned before, well, the budget is not very accessible. So we really need to be able to test these technologies and use them and make them more democratic. I think maybe, I don't know, maybe we can start organizing design communities that have more open access AIs, because it's really difficult to work in a way like this with, for example, students or other communities. And maybe as designers, we can also start developing our own open source tools.
Maybe I could just chip in there. I mean, I think one of the things I really have problems with is the way that certain software, there's a kind of Autodesk owns many of the softwares, right? And we know that as a big corporate entity, it's beholden to its shareholders, right? And it basically doesn't care about the rest of the world. And the fact that actually in Mexico, it's probably very difficult to buy a license, and maybe you have kind of cracked licenses or whatever. But there's a problem there, and the fact that they shut down Pier 9, which was an incredible resource in San Francisco, because the shareholders said it's not making enough profit. Now, it seems to me that maybe this is an opportunity where open source AI can become useful. We've now seen some of these models coming from China that are totally free, which really makes a huge difference. And it might just be, I mean, I guess the problem really with the robot is not just the cost of the robot, but the cost of actually providing a kind of a space in which you can operate with the proper environmental control systems, and then also employing someone who can actually use it. You know, there are a lot of costs involved with the robot, but AI potentially, you know, could be free, and it could be quite an important way of democratizing access to some of these tools, possibly.
In my opinion, Neil, I think like robotics, I don't think it's the strongest part of technology can do a very big impact. For example, for the housing crisis. Here in Mexico, the housing crisis is not about the housing. We don't need the house. We need credits to pay the houses, because the people do not have money and because they have informal jobs. So in my opinion, I don't think robotics, I think it's limited to democratize, but artificial intelligence, for me, it's a white canvas. For me, I think artificial intelligence have a very biggest opportunity or bigger opportunity than robotics that I think can do better impact to the communities, because once everybody have a cell phone, like you only need a cell phone, maybe you don't have Wi-Fi or internet access, but a step by step or year by year, I think the internet access is getting easier, and everybody have TikTok, for example. So I don't think you don't need a robot, you don't need a lot of electricity, you need a little bit, but I think we need to focus on that in terms of emerging communities in Mexico, rural context, when you don't have like a lot of like institutional like how to say infrastructure. So in my opinion, artificial intelligence is an opportunity.
I do agree. Actually, whenever you talk about what are the subjects that or the disciplines that get developed according the wealth of countries, in wealth countries probably you have philosophy, chemistry, engineering, but in poor countries, philosophy is really easy to go through because you only need your mind, and everybody has one. You know, it's with thin air you can do a lot. So pretty much it happens the same way with AI. As long as you have a cell phone, probably you can already go into it. Yeah, Stable Diffusion, DeepSeek have free models. So yeah, you can go into that. But I think also in terms of how tools go into rural areas or have access to vulnerable communities, already having tools in the public universities is given access, because at least in Mexico, many public universities are the only way that a person with low economic capacity would be able to make a career. So having these tools in public universities, I think is a really good thing, because these people that might be interested in technology have access to the knowledge. Probably whenever they go out, it's going to be hard for them to have enough money to buy resources, but at least probably they can develop as technicians or work for someone, and having the know-how. So already this is a first step, having the technology in public universities and free universities such as UNAM, and also what Alicia did with taking out from the lab, and many others have done. Gramazio Coller had the rob that went out, and Daniel Ingracia, this Italian from that lives in Germany, is already working. Besides doing open source machines, he's working on a mobile lab that already has every tool to make different things. So he already is selling the truck with all the machines. He's taking it to Ukraine, I think, nowadays. And yeah, there's a mobile fab lab in Mexico. I think it's in Tabasco. And I think having this kind of things and taking it to the communities is a really, really good thing. I used to be the distance education coordinator in UNAM. I was the first, and I thought, I used to say that whenever we went online, we officially became national as a university, because we were able to touch all the geography. So probably we could have like education could be widespread, such as Fab Academy, if we had some labs going for different practices all around the territory, at least in Mexico, in our context, and making people to have enough knowledge and to have enough capacity of first knowing how to use the machines, and then being able to be critical if the machines should be used in their work and their local context, because sometimes it would be better to hire a person instead of a machine. And yeah, machines also are becoming cheaper. There's several Chinese startups that are already having robots, and they're doing a great job also in ETH with Compass, making able to contact to communicate with robots through Compass. So yeah, there are so many ways we're developing forward, and I think we also have to do open source and have tools taken to communities and people and also knowledge and ways of understanding how this could be used for making the future brighter. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just to pick up on that, what we discovered, I've told this story so many times, but it's worth maybe mentioning again. When we, with the pandemic, when Digital Futures went online, and we suddenly jumped from 700 to 20,000 people students being part of it, is we obviously realized we were breaking through the physical walls of the academy in some senses, but we didn't appreciate until it really happened was we were breaking through some of the social, economic, and political barriers that were preventing certain people from having access to information. I think this is an important aspect of it, but I also think, just picking up in some ways of what Alicia was saying, is that we need to, in a sense, rethink what we mean by architecture. Because I mean, when I was very young, someone from the RIBA asked me what was my definition of architecture, and I think I said something like, it wasn't just about the design of building, it was about imagining a better future world. And once you engage with the questions of issues of insurance and things, I think these are part of architecture. And I think if we can use that sort of architectural imagination to think through these systems and how we can improve our world, that's an important thing. And it means stepping beyond the traditional role of the architect and thinking about how these tools can be used to democratize everything. And just one final point is, when I was in Pakistan, I was told that there are more people who have mobile phones than who can actually write. And they're actually using mobile phones to teach people to write. So, I think we need to harness and really think about this and go beyond the kind of limitations of a corporate world to imagine how these things can really benefit society as a whole, because otherwise we're stuck in an Autodesk kind of scenario. So, but there's hope.
Great. I don't know if we should be already wrapping it up.
Yeah, we should. Just, another kind of just an extra point is to say that I think also when I look at Xcool's platform, it's kind of almost designed for developers, and you could say, okay, well, that the developers could use it and just get rid of the architect. But at the same time, the architect could become a developer, and the tools are there. I mean, before, the role of the developer was beyond us, but all you need to go is to ChatGPT and say, what are the first 4 steps to becoming a developer? And it will tell you. So sometimes these tools can actually act as kind of catalysts for bigger social changes. And I certainly think that we should be trying to push that, to reimagine things. And, there are examples from Mexico, as we were mentioning before, of how maybe we could pursue that. So maybe you guys could be showing us the lead in some ways.
Yeah, I would like to mention that there's this concept about automation. That's what we are looking for in our everyday life in an architecture office. For example, of course, if we can diminish or we can dedicate less time on construction documents, of course we can have more time to design. So at the end of the day, that translates into several hours that those hours are paid on every project, and we can be more creative. So at some point, I think automation is the future, right? Like what we're trying to do is trying to do what we do faster, so that we can get to be more creative, and so that we can continue having these discussions, like multidisciplinary discussions and brainstorms and so on. We want the funny part. We don't want, like the tedious part of just being in front of the screen and clicking in our hourless days.
And actually, there's something interesting happening, because it's happening the other way around. Because with AI, we're obtaining creativity, and now we're doing plans for AI. The computation is done by humans, and AI has the creativity.
Exactly.
So we had to fight back.
I saw a meme like some days ago, and it said like, why AI wants to do my art and I have to wash my dishes. Why AI do not wash my dishes and I can do my art? So I think this is how it should be. We should be more critical. And I just want to compliment the idea. Like I see like the last question, no, about how to do this more understandable. And I think yesterday I was discussing with a student from UNAM in Museo del Eco, and they were discussing about the architectural practice in Mexico, like nowadays. I told them we need to communicate a little bit better what we are doing and why. We are not really clear. Like sometimes we're saying we do buildings, and sometimes we're saying we are doing art. We need to, like, in terms of technology, I think we need to be more clear how, for example, in this case, no, like the AI and how these tools are collaborating with us instead of replacing us, no? Like we should be more careful, more aware about how we communicate technology. I think so. With conscious or awareness of this word. Other thing that I really want to mention, for example, Alicia was explaining beautiful, no, like the practice about robotic fabrication. And I think our weakness in Mexico, I don't know, in Canada or other countries, you can tell me, but it's about scalability. It's my question. It's my currently question. How we do our companies more scalable? Because if like happens to me when I am, I don't know, talking about the future steps and, oh yeah, I want to do this. I want to create a material, for example, and then I started to be compared with industry like Cemex, and I could not compete with Cemex. I could not compete with Interceramic and Nova Ceramic and all this because I don't have the infrastructure. But on the other hand, I'm not a craftsman. I'm not an artisan. So where we are, and this is an open question, and I really want to left, because I think digital fabricators, we need to recognize where is our place in the line of production in architecture and construction. And if, of course, we are innovating construction, but our impact is not huge as this kind of industry companies. For me, the industry companies, personally, they are my allies, my friends, my people that I can collaborate. But of course, they not took me serious because I cannot have this kind of results. And other option is to try to be like a very famous artist and try to sell things like outdoor things. So for me, this is a very open question, where we are. Like,
I think like to add to that, and I really appreciate that comment, and just to say like I mean, for us it's very important that we do architectural products and not artist products or craft products, because I think that's critical to really have a differentiation. And of course, we cannot compete with industry at this stage, but like, for example, we did invest a lot of money on getting approved Blue Lamp certified, so then we can start to do it. I guess material innovation is a lot more difficult because there are a lot of more things, but what I find very fascinating, and I really appreciate about these panels and about knowing, like talking to all of you, is like there are many more of us that are kind of emerging, and I think that something to really change is to say, like everyone that is now working on microfactories, on digital fabrication, and robotics, how can we share information? How can we work together? How can we collaborate to make this the standard? Because actually, we are not competitors amongst us. Our competition is the industry and the large industry, but we all should collaborate and come together, because then we can also have a stronger, like you say, Dinorah, on your own, you are not going to make a change. But there are so many people, and there is and so many people working on this, on collaborating, that we can work together to make it happen. And I think that sometimes, and it's something I was talking with Madeline Aganon recently, was about like how we can enable this collaboration workflows between everyone that is working in robotics, in digital fabrication, in AI, from an architectural perspective, because that could make us really stronger and not see us each other as enemies, but as there is a bigger enemy, right? Which, like, I think we are emerging. So I think that it's something super interesting. I don't know the answer, but it's something I'm really like in a like a Compass. We're using Compass a lot right now because it's open source, it's collaborative. But how can we have more workflows that are collaborative and we can share information? I will be really interested in talking more about that and knowing more about that.
Yeah, probably we should be having our final statements. So I don't know if Vanessa or Claudia want to go for it.
Yes. Well, I think this has been a really cool conversation, seeing how technology can be applied in such different ways. I think I really like how the conversation went to the local issues of our country, Mexico, and also the opportunities that there are. I think like you say, Ronan, we are always in crisis, but we are also really creative and inventive to kind of sort out our way through this crisis and finding these opportunity pockets. And for me, I'm really fascinated about working with students because I think that they are the future. I used to work in companies designing products, and now I'm not designing so much anymore products, but I really work with trying to teach or collaborate with the future students. The thing I enjoy the most is actually not teaching itself, but actually working with them together on projects. So I really love the work at the lab. And I think the students also bring in their perspective to the lab, and that is really, really cool because they're new generations. They think very differently, and I learn from them every day. And I think it's also really cool to see how more and more women are using technology and doing things that were usually seen as more maybe dominated by men, or so we as women are also taking these positions and using these tools. And thank you so much. It has been really, really nice to be here today.
Thank you, Vanhe. Claudia.
Yeah. Yes, I wanted to add that instead of looking out for limits, we should also be very proud because Mexico has a lot of identity. So whatever comes of the creativity in the Mexican professionals is going to be, like very unique. And that's what we have to try to achieve. And also that, just as you said, Ronan, that we are very used to this crisis over crisis and crisis and crisis, but that made us like very, very adaptable and very, very. And there is a word. There is a word that we are very resilient, and so that's another, like another very, very positive point that we should be proud of. So I guess we should expect that, like all of these young generations, they will make a good use of the technologies, the use of AI, and they will come up with something crazy and unique. I'm pretty sure of that.
Great. Yeah, to agree. I don't know if Dinorah and Alicia want to say something else, or...
Yes, I just want to say the next conversation, Neil, when you were in Mexico, we should do it in the Mexican way with beers, mezcal, please. No,
Oh, we did it. We did it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it now to be in being consideration for this kind of conversation. Also, I'm a very big fan of Alicia because she was one of the first women doing this. I remember when I was in the ETH, I think so, and I saw her. Actually, I was in the NIT Candela as a student. Like, imagine this. So for me, thank you, Ron, for doing this opportunity. Well, Neil, also, nice to meet you, in this online work, but also, thank you for all the people that are saw us and listen to us a lot of hours talking about this. And also, I think it's a very big appreciation, to your concerns, and your questions, and hopefully our talk could be very productive to produce a better future for us. And thank you, Vanessa, Claudia, and Alicia for being here also. It was a very, very beautiful and also interesting to listen about your research in AI.
Yeah, just to say, thank you, Neil, Ronan, for the invitation. Thank you, Neil, for keeping the DigitalFUTURES platform going. I think it's still really interesting to log in sometimes and see what is going on. It's been fascinating to keep it post-pandemic. And thanks for the invitation. Really appreciate getting to know Well, Dinorah and Claudia, Vanessa, really excited to see it and to see new how things are moving in Mexico. I mean, this is really fascinating. I'm super excited, and I would love to continue the collaboration if there's and the conversation. If there's any opportunity, I'm always open for that. And yeah, thank you very, very much.
Right. Well, Dinorah, it's been great. Alicia, it's been fabulous. Vanessa, Claudia, thank you. And thank you, Neil, for making this possible. Thank you for letting me gather such a great pack of talented women that are designing the future. So this is it. Thank you very much, everybody.
Maybe just a final comment. I mean, I don't know if you know, but Acadia, the reason why Acadia had their conference in Mexico, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, I think exactly when it was precisely because of Trump. They decided to go there to have the conference
I've been
there.
thinking, repeating the thing.
Yeah, I know we should. We absolutely should. And in terms of mezcal, I remember staying at the conference hotel and looking at my phone, best mezcal bar. It was actually at the back of the hotel. It was the most incredible time. Yeah, I just want to thank you all for contributing today. I think what to my mind came across was how you as a group were kind of, in a sense, it wasn't just about designing buildings and products, and it was about co-designing with your students, especially their lives, and building not just constructions, but building hope for that generation. That really came across very, very strongly. And this is an incredibly energetic, optimistic, and talented group that Ronan has got together. Thank you so much for doing that. Finally, I just want to say that I want to thank the Digital Futures team behind this, especially Giovanna Piaca, who is here looking after things, and she did the posters and things. And she is part of our Digital Futures Hispanic group. And I would love to see some more sessions in Spanish rather than in English, helping out those people in Mexico and all the Spanish-speaking world to help them to spread the word about these new tools. So hopefully will help to democratize things and make the world a better place. So
we can do that for sure.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks,
Right.
Giovanna. Digital Futures team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank